Hi everyone, and welcome to part 2 of our Intro to Cloud. My name's Roz, and I have with me here again our head of cloud, Ben. Hi Ben.
Hi Roz, good to see you again.
Good to see you too. So today we're going to have a really candid conversation about when to use cloud and when to not use cloud. I know in our last video we touched upon the business benefits and considerations to kind of bear in mind when thinking about the cloud, and we talked about the benefits, costs, and whether you should consider putting all of your services in the cloud. And so if you haven't checked that out yet, be sure to check that out. It's on our YouTube channel. We'll probably also link it below this video. Today, Ben, I would love to pick your brains about when to use cloud and when not to use cloud. So when deciding what to do as an organization, what are a few things that you would like them to consider when it comes to working out what the best route for them to take is?
Yeah, it's quite a big question and not an easy one to answer quickly, but I'll try my best. I think there are a number of considerations around when and when not to use cloud, and I don't think there'll ever be a single this is the right time or the right scenario to use cloud, and this is the wrong time or the wrong scenario to use cloud. Every organization is different, their own requirements are different, their application stack is different, and so there really isn't a single answer to that. But I think one of the big trends at the moment, one of the things that's talked about a lot is digital transformation. Probably talked about a little bit too much. Some people are tired of the term digital transformation, but if you take it back to the point and what it's really about and why an organization would look to transform itself digitally, I was thinking about sort of some generational changes and differences between different types of people. And Roz, you and I were speaking a week or two ago, and you were laughing hysterically when I told you a story about back in the day. If I'd arranged to meet some friends at the weekend, we probably had a landline telephone, and we might speak on a Friday evening, and we'd agree to meet on the Saturday, and I'd get on the bus and just be where I said I was going to be at the time I was going to be, and rely on them being in the same place. And we were sort of laughing, comparing that to today, where between that phone call that probably never happened because we'd have been in a WhatsApp group, right? Instead, there'd have been, probably 15 or 20 messages. I'm getting ready. I'm about to leave. I've left. I'm at the bus stop. I'm on the bus. I'm 5 minutes away. I'm off the bus, and so on and so forth.
That is so true.
And it was just quite amusing to sort of see the difference in how just how we as human beings behave. And back to the point around transformation, a digital transformation, I think that the real thing there is because of changes in human behaviors and whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, we're much less tolerant of delays or poor service, or everything has to have such immediacy. We want an answer now, and we want what we want now, or at least we want to know when and why. And again, you order a parcel and we're completely expecting several emails, text messages, whatever else, telling us the status of that and the precise hour that it's going to arrive at our door. So I think just this change in consumer demand is a massive thing that drives the need for digital innovation, transformation, call it what you will. So back to your original question of when to use cloud, I think that's a really good place to start. If an organization is looking to transform itself, cloud can really provide a lot of agility. We talked about that a bit in the last video, but if you think of particularly a more established, more traditional business that might have a legacy set of infrastructure and applications in its data center, unpicking those things and making a change in that environment is very difficult and takes a lot of time. So if there is a real need to transform and deliver a different type of service or a different type of experience to your customer, sometimes cloud is a great opportunity to enable you to innovate faster. So it's a roundabout way answer to your question of when should you use cloud, but I think that is a really good use case. If you are looking to innovate, you are looking to transform your business, you need to move quickly, and you can't be held back in if you like by your legacy infrastructure and applications, then that's a great reason to use cloud. The other half of your question of when wouldn't you use cloud? Well, I think on a similar note, if you don't need to transform a service, you don't need to change that. If either your customers are completely happy with the level of service that you deliver today, or perhaps it's a less customer facing, less business critical internal application that has less criticality to it, then again, we talked about this last time, sometimes you can deliver that more cost effectively in an on-premises environment. So that might be an example when not to use cloud. I don't know if that's giving you an answer to the question. It's kind of giving you an opinion on some scenarios, but as I set out at the start, I don't think there's a symbol, this is right and that's wrong.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's what we've been saying before, not one size fits all. So it's very like unique to the case.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's interesting that you say all about digital transformation, because this past year has been great. Like I look back on it and I'm like, it's so crazy how one day at the office I was like, I'll see you guys tomorrow, and then we were all the next day working from home. And so, and it seemed like the whole world just kind of like up and then went home and was able to operate just as we would in the office, which I think is
Absolutely.
pretty crazy. Yeah. And I know that we were talking before about kind of like high street shops that maybe haven't adapted as well online, and therefore now are non-existent. So what would you say to that?
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. And I think, COVID has, for lots of organizations, COVID has just massively accelerated that need to transform. I think we talked about changes in human behavior, and that's been an evolutionary process that happens over time. But with COVID, where you have such a sudden, massive shift overnight, as you say, you said, bye, I'll see you tomorrow, and here you are a year later still waiting in some cases to see those people.
So true.
But and so that that massively accelerated it, and it forced that change. And I think, to touch on a couple of the high street names that most of us would have heard of, certainly in the UK, the likes of Debenhams or Topshop, and Top Man, that those brands have been around for as long as I can remember, and long before, well, certainly the case of Debenhams before I was born, which was a very long time ago. But it is, in some ways, it's quite sad to see those brands disappear. However, you're completely right that those I am sure that those brands had some kind of transformation program happening pre-COVID. But as we touched on, when you've got a legacy infrastructure, and when you're a decades old retailer with systems and processes and applications and teams and people in place that are used to working a certain way, it's very difficult to unpick that. And when something like COVID happens, if you have to change overnight, it's near impossible to do that. So I think, that you can see it's had a fundamental change on them. You look at the likes of, I don't know, an ASOS or a Boohoo, or those much more modern, born in the cloud, born online brands. They have been, they've been around a lot less time. They deployed all of their services into cloud or cloud-like environments from day one. So they have that agility. And actually, they were already servicing people in an online fashion, where you could order anything from anywhere at any time, get lots of regular updates, things turn up if they don't fit or they're the wrong color. They have a very slick process for returning goods. They were already there. And so it was almost obvious, with the benefit of hindsight, that something like COVID was going to grow their business, but really damage the more traditional high street brands.
So going back to what you said at the beginning about digital transformation and agility, what do you think then that means for places, for example, an industry like healthcare, where like it's not just whether our groceries get on time in terms of that, it's like people's lives are kind of on the line. Like how would you advise, say, a healthcare organization that might be looking to go to cloud and figuring out what journey to use?
I mean, it's a really interesting use case, for all sorts of reasons, not only because of the pandemic that we've been in, and healthcare has been right at the forefront of that. But as you know, we Loadbalancer, we do a lot of work in the healthcare industry, and we have a lot of customers in that space. And in some respects, some parts of the healthcare industry are right at the bleeding edge of technology. You might argue that vaccines and that side of it is sort of pharma and biotech really, but it's still healthcare linked. And almost at the opposite end of the spectrum, you have hospitals with physical bits of equipment, and whether that's an X-ray machine or an MRI scanner or something like that, it's you can't move that to the cloud. You can't you can't have an MRI scan in the cloud. I mean, but having said that, there are elements of the service that could be run from the cloud. Once the scanner has done its thing, where your images are stored, could be in the cloud, and that potentially makes it easier to share those across multiple locations. Potentially gives you more scalability. So there are. I'm going to use my slight get out of jail. There's no one size fits all. Again, this is becoming a theme. I'm sorry, but I think in the medical industry or that sector, it is quite difficult because there's such a diverse set of requirements. As I say, and I think there's still a degree, in some respects, a degree of nervousness about patient records and confidential information. How comfortable people are with that. Being in the cloud. For me personally, I don't think the cloud is any less secure than a data center somewhere else. I think we talked last time that clouds are data centers, and I think if we can't rely on some of the largest, richest organizations in the world to know how to do security, then we're possibly in trouble. However, some people take a different view. So I think, the cloud can definitely give some advantages in some scenarios, but it's not a magic pill for everything.
Yeah, that makes sense. That was actually going to be one of my later questions, where we're talking about, say, like government organizations in terms of storing really sensitive data. I guess you would probably say a similar thing where, you have the legacy systems and things like that, and you can't fully, I guess, like move it all to the cloud.
It's not that you can't, it's that some people won't. But again, I suspect that there's a degree of that being an emotional, personal comfort factor driven decision more than a logic driven decision. But let's face it, it's humans being, for now, it's human beings making the decision still. And there will always be an element of, emotion, feeling, trust. So I think it'll be a while yet, but at the same time, I also firmly believe that at some point in the future, even the most sensitive of patient data or military intelligence data will reside in the cloud, because the large cloud providers will work hard enough to make sure that they can do that. And I'm sure all of them will and can point to huge government organizations, medical organizations, financial organizations, legal organizations that are all already using the cloud. So you can pick any of the what you would traditionally think of as high regulatory compliance types of organizations, and any of the large cloud providers will be able to point you at a number of customers in that space.
What are people that the cloud developers kind of working on now? I know that's probably a really big, broad question, but what are the kind of issues that like organizations are?
Well, I think
maybe,
I think a big development has been in what's often termed cloud native development. So moving into containerized workloads and very agile development methodologies. But even that, when you sort of reverse away from the technology and think about it, what those things give you, they mean that you can roll out new products or new features for your products, on a daily basis. I can't remember the stats off the top of my head, but there are some absolutely mind-numbing statistics around how many software releases Amazon do in a month. It's just ridiculous. The speed at which they are innovating is it's almost beyond comprehension. And that is all about innovate faster, connect to your customers better, respond to customer needs, as near instantly as you can, because that is the way in the modern world that you win. And you win in that sort of fight for the customer's hearts and minds is to be most innovative, first to market, best products, best services. That is the modern world. So at a technology level, there are different ways that can manifest itself. And as I said, I touched on cloud native because that enables you to innovate much faster. But again, I mentioned this thing, the mobile phone.
Yeah.
There's lots and lots of talk at the moment about the Internet of Things and edge devices and how you connect cloud with edge appliances. You can pretty much track your food from whatever it's been cooked in to your front door. And that again is just about that consumer behavior of wanting to know where it is and when it's going to be here and all of that. So to answer your question of what are people working on now, I think it's those sorts of things. It's just about how do you get there first and fastest and deliver the best customer experience, because ultimately satisfying your customers is the thing that will help you win, because the other thing that all of this innovation and change has brought for you and I as the consumers is choice. So if that one's not good enough, fast enough, interesting enough, well, guess what? There's 5 that look just like it.
To summarize our conversation, what would your parting words of wisdom be for us?
I think it comes back to your original question of when and when not to use cloud. Just think about why. Why do you think it's the right thing for you? Why do you believe it's the right thing for you? I think there has also been, sometimes, and cloud is not the only thing guilty of being in a hype cycle or, having lots of hype around it. There are lots of other technologies and trends that have that, but it's think it through. Think about why. Think about why it fits for your business, but also where and why it might not. Don't be seduced into following the crowd or just going with the latest trend and go, we must put everything in the cloud, because it may be the answer for some things. It's probably not the golden pill that some will sell you that it is.
Thank you so much, Ben.
You're more than welcome.
So if you'd like to get in contact with us, visit our support page, our website. All of our links will be below, and we'll see you in the next one.